Channel, AS. Hello, this is Emerelda again. I communicated a message to you last week, titled Emerelda, Life Can Be Hard, Please Be Kind to Yourself. If you missed that message, please read or listen to that one first. Like last week's message, this message may be a bit intense and will mention psychological after effects of myself having been captured, tortured, and raped by reptilians. Those psychological after effects are not the focus of this message, but I will mention some of them as they become relevant. To start off, I would like to share some intel. The dark side or the service to self side often lives in denial and often underestimates and doesn't understand the light. Yet even the dark side has realized that they're losing their grip on Earth humans. And because your DNA comes from many galactic races and because of your experiences with the light and the dark, Earth humans have a huge psychic potential. You have the potential to become incredibly powerful at some point in the future. And Earth humans are on a path that is going to lead to most of you ultimately siding with the light. Because of this, the reptilians recently attacked, around Earth and elsewhere. Their primary goal was to take control of Earth. After all, we had chased away or arrested most hostile galactics from Earth. The people who are currently oppressing you are mostly Earth humans. We successfully defended you and ourselves from these reptilian attacks. However, we unfortunately took quite some casualties in the process. One friend of mine died, and one person died who was somewhere between a friend and an acquaintance of mine. Personally, I did a few things of military value by doing some coordination work in the rear, but I contributed less than I would have liked. I guess I'll have to remind myself of one of last week's lessons, which is that it doesn't make sense to compare yourself to some theoretical standard. After all, most likely that theoretical standard isn't actually based on anything real. I contributed less than I would have liked because these battles were psychologically triggering for me. The Galactic Confederation's military defenses were very solid. Yet I was petrified for a time by the irrational fear that we would lose, that I would be captured once again by reptilians and that they would continue doing the things to me that they did the last time they captured me. I also horrified my family when they read in my mind the firm conviction that if any of us were close to being captured by reptilians, that I would end my life or the life of whatever family member of mine was about to be captured. There is no way that I am going to allow myself or anyone in my family to be captured by reptilians, ever again. Fortunately, the Galactic Confederation won convincingly and we beat back these attacks. We had some tactical setbacks and local retreats in non-critical areas, but we are currently reversing these. By the time you get this message, we will probably have mostly or fully recaptured those areas. The reptilians are quite good on a tactical level, but they neglect the strategic and operational levels. Or to put it in plainer terms, they're ferocious fighters on an individual level. They're also quite instinctively clever about winning battles. However, they don't work well or coordinate well together on any scale larger than a battlefield. They don't think well in terms of a bigger strategic picture, and they don't spend enough time thinking about logistics and formations supporting each other and positioning and control of critical areas and about consolidating captured positions. If they're not immediately successful, they also can engage in backstabbing and fighting among themselves. A group of reptilians can fall apart if their leader dies. How effective reptilians are depends very much on whether or not they have a strong, smart, cunning leader. I personally have had some resistance to Arkok ever since my capture by reptilians. Yet Arkok is still a very smart reptilian who, before he turned to the light, operated at the highest levels of reptilian society. And I must say, Arkok gave a lot of very useful advice that saved quite a few lives. The one time I saw him recently, he seemed less down on himself and more in his element than usual, at least in that moment. So that's good. Hakan also did well, in as far as I can evaluate someone who is significantly higher in the military hierarchy than myself. The troops also love him, for understandable reasons. And if a soldier has to fight, it feels so much better to fight when you believe that the military decision makers above you are competent and are making the right decisions. Now, to be clear, our successful defense doesn't mean that we'll land tomorrow. Still, if these attacks had been successful in destroying our fleet around Earth, then reptilians would have taken control of Earth. They would likely then have killed 90% of Earth humans within 6 months and thoroughly enslaved the rest. If they had won these recent battles, they likely would have had enough reptiles on the ground to actually be able to do that. To be fair, if the reptilians had beaten us, maybe Source or certain non-physical, very high consciousness beings or collectives would have intervened directly. Generally these types of non-physical, very high consciousness beings or collectives don't intervene directly if it's not absolutely necessary. They prefer to let physical beings such as us deal with matters of physical reality, if at all possible. So I guess it's the old principle of as above, so below. Some of you want us to directly intervene on Earth in a big way, and so far we haven't, and you're suffering because of that. Similarly, on a slightly higher level, the same happens. Namely, some of us wished that non-physical higher consciousness beings would directly intervene to help us against the reptilian attacks, and they didn't, and because of that we had quite some casualties. On a positive note, as above, so below also implies that because destructive beings just lost on a more galactic level, they may very well also lose on Earth. Of course, I am not saying that people should just sit on the couch and wait for other people to liberate Earth. I still recommend that you do your best in terms of your own inner work, and or in terms of helping others or being kind to others. You can't do more than your best, but you should do your best. Meanwhile, we of the Galactic Confederation are not sitting still. We already were sending positive energy to Earth, mostly to raise your vibration and to raise the energy on Earth. Those energies had the effects of slowly awakening your dormant, so-called junk DNA, however that was more of a side effect or a secondary benefit. On January 14th of this year, we started sending energy to Earth that is directly and primarily aimed at awakening your dormant DNA, and thereby expanding your psychic powers and your inner knowing. Because of this, the probability that Earth humans will actually free themselves in 2024 or 2025 has risen substantially. I'm not saying that this is guaranteed to happen, but I am saying that this is now substantially more likely. If Earth humans fail to do so, we still have our intervention plan ready. Now, these new energies do not mean that everyone will be immediately fully unlocked. Rather, people will become more and more psychically unlocked over time. The Great Awakening, as it has been called, may accelerate even more. For many of you, you won't immediately be able to move objects with your mind, but you might notice your intuition or your dreams being a bit sharper. It may be good the coming months to practice listening to your inner guidance, if you're not yet doing that already. Just make sure that you're not confusing emotions with intuition, because while emotions are valid, they can also lead you astray. To distinguish between them, your intuition isn't judgmental or fearful, while your emotions can be. On the other hand, some of you are currently so emotionally blocked that this energy will take quite a long time to activate you in this way, and you won't notice anything in the foreseeable future. For those among you who are currently blocked, one good practice is to observe whatever comes up. And while this may sound obvious, few people do this consistently. Instead, people often go immediately inside the emotion or inside the thought without observing it first. For example, a thought in someone might arise such as John is a jerk, and that person will immediately take that as truth and start thinking about John indeed being a jerk. Instead, before immediately going into that thought and accepting it as real, it's a good step to first observe that a thought has arisen that says that John is a jerk.